So now let's get to the main event. It's phenomenal.
Welcome to the 2980 network. You have found Open Mic Night. Open Mic Night is your source for all things Apple. We are an Apple-focused tech podcast. We cover everything from updates from Apple to how to use your Apple products better. So hopefully you guys can learn something new while you listen to the podcast and have some fun while you do it. Everything about the show, all the show notes, information, subscription links can all be found over at 2980network.com. That's a site where all of our podcasts are now located. This and Suit and Scrubs, and hopefully more podcasts in the future. But head on over to 2980network.com. You can find out all the info you need. This show is also a member of the Geeks Network. Head on over to thegeeksnetwork.com for other awesome tech podcasts. My Thursday night show I do with Jim, Home Gadget Geeks, which we actually did on Blab for the first time the other night, is over there. So you guys can head over to thegeeksnetwork.com to find some awesome other podcasts. So we have been gone for a long, long time, primarily my fault, actually pretty much all my fault. Law school finals were taking a toll on me. And so we took a few weeks off, but now we're back, which is a lot of fun. And we have not done live video in a few months now. We switched to audio because of scheduling and because of, conflicts and stuff like that. But now that I'm done with finals, I really wanted to get back onto video. And last week over on Home Gadget Geeks, we hopped onto Blab, and I just loved the platform. I liked how easy it was, how simple it was, and how the viewers can actually hop in and talk to us if they want. And they can ask questions or comment on things, and it's a lot of fun. So we are now using Blab. So for you guys who are listening to the audio, which is most of you just subscribe to the audio content. I think it's going to be Wednesday nights from here on out for a little bit at 7 p.m. Central, our same time, just a different day on Wednesdays. You can head over to 2980network.com/live, and it'll always be posted there. But I will also tweet out all the links you guys need to find our Blab, so you guys can come over and hop on in. So if you guys are out there and you do listen to just the audio, come out and join the live video, because I think it's fun. I think it's a whole different experience for you guys who have just listened to us via audio, and you guys can contribute and listen. Also, a big welcome to anyone that's listening to us for the first time on Blab. Like I said, Open Mic Night, we just cover Apple topics. We're a podcast. We've been doing this for a little bit over a year now. Colin joined me about halfway through to be my co-host, and we just talk about Apple stuff. So welcome to any new users that are joining us via the Blab platform tonight, which is kind of fun. Colin, welcome back after a long hiatus.
Yes.
It was a while.
It was quite a while, and sorry, I keep looking away from the screen because I'm trying to type something out as you're talking, and it's just one of those things where I'm like,
yeah, no problem. But I mainly over that time we would get to the night and we would plan on doing a podcast, and you'd get a text from me saying like, yeah, it's not going to happen tonight. Things have gotten crazy, and so yeah, that's generally how that whole thing went. Okay, so we are going to dive right into the topics tonight because I think we have some really fun stuff to talk about. I think we have some updates, obviously, since it's been so long. We have some updates to talk about from Apple, but we also have a lot of topics of things that I have just thought about over the last month and thought, hey, next time we're on Open Mic Night, I really need to talk to the listeners about this. So the first one may come as a huge shock to all of you. And I will admit it, I have actually gone to the dark side. Mr. Jim Collison over from Home Gadget Geeks, he got me a Windows 10 machine because over on that show, they are primarily Windows show. I kind of bring the Apple to their show. So they said, hey, we need to get Windows 10 into your hands so you can stop bashing us. And as much as I hate to admit it, it's actually pretty cool. So I've played around with Windows 10. The device I'm using is called a Kangaroo. It's called actually a micro PC. So it's a tiny little machine about this big, a little bit bigger than a credit card, super thin, has HDMI ports and USB ports, and runs just like a normal machine, just, a little less powered than a normal machine would be. And so I've been playing around with Windows 10, and it's clean. It's sleek, and there are a lot of features on there that I actually think Apple can look at and say, hey, we might want to take some of those features. These big tech companies, they all look at each other's stuff and take each other's ideas. But I was just shocked, and I'm kind of angry with Jim because I used to like to just be able to bash Windows with no backing to my argument whatsoever. I had never used it. I had never played with it. I use Windows 7 actually at work, but not for anything like I normally use at home. It's just for work stuff, so it's not a really good use case for it. But I liked bashing them with no backing to it. Now I can't do that. Now I actually like it, and that's a problem for me. I'm conflicted now, Colin.
See, it's funny that you say that, because I mean, for the amount of time that I've used Windows, which I mean, I have Windows at work, so 2.5 years now that I've been running Windows daily, and then I come home to a MacBook. I mean, I liked Windows 8. I kind of liked it more.
Really?
Truthfully, I didn't run into as many problems.
Okay.
Like the computer I have at work, it doesn't wake up from once you close the screen. I don't know what the issue is. I've looked it up, and I mean, there's an open source code that you can like put somewhere, but I'm like, I'm going to destroy my computer if I try that.
Right.
So it's just one of those things. It's just kind of annoying little things where it's every morning I open my computer and have to do a hard shutdown by holding the button and then reboot. And every now and then it's like, I think today I need to run an update on there, because it's kind of, every now and then it'll crawl and it's like, oh, I need to fix something.
Yeah, and they're still working the bugs out, obviously, with Windows 10. So, I mean, those things are going to happen. I actually set mine to get developer builds, so I'm getting them a little bit early to kind of test them out. Today, they just dropped a brand new build that I'm actually running. But overall, it's definitely not the drastic difference there was in the past. It's no longer kind of Windows WoW and Mac WoW like so different. They're a lot alike nowadays, although there's going to be some glitches here and there. I was just shocked at that. I guess I haven't used Windows in so long that I have never noticed how similar they are now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's really it used to be where the only difference is keyboard sometimes, where control is in a different spot than command.
Right.
So in that aspect, that's really the only big difference, is remembering to get used to either use my pinky or use my thumb.
I have that problem when I'm remoting into work. The keyboard shortcuts are different. So I'm on a Mac remoting into a Windows, so I have to do a whole different keyboard shortcut. But overall, just the design of it too, they don't look as different anymore. So Windows back in the day, you could tell it was built for a work environment. You know, it looked very professional, and that was kind of the idea about it. And Mac on OS 10 was more of your friendly operating system, you know, more of your home style friendly looking thing. And now they all look very sleek, very similar. I don't think any of them look toyish. I wouldn't say that, but they look a little bit less and more, I don't know, personal and homey, I guess is the best way to describe it. And that was just my biggest shock coming from that. But the other thing I did notice, so when I got to Windows 10, obviously I'd never used Windows before, and I was having trouble finding a lot of the settings, just general settings. I didn't know where to look for things. I had a general idea. I mean, obviously I'm a tech guy. I could figure it out. But one thing I started to use that I didn't think I would ever use was Cortana. So Cortana with the Windows, if you haven't used it yet, it's just a kind of a voice. You can ask her things kind of like a Siri, and she can help you out. I've had pretty good luck with it. I plugged in my ATR, so I have my microphone right by my face most of the time, and I could ask her settings for display, settings for anything, and she was doing a pretty good job of finding stuff. Now, I will admit I haven't used Cortana for anything besides finding applications and files and settings, but it worked pretty well to the point where I'm wondering why we don't have Siri yet on OS 10.
I mean, I guess it's kind of, that's really going to be person to person, because maybe it's just because I have it's my work computer and I'm in the middle of an office with other people that I don't use Cortana, but I've never even considered using it.
Right. Well, and that's kind of the conversation I wanted to go into was, are we close to a time when in the workplace, in public places, talking to our machines is considered not a faux pas? It's a very normal, it's okay. I was talking to Jim, and Jim and I had a conversation about this on Home Gadget Geeks, and he says that at Gallup where he works, you know, he's in the atrium and he's talking to his phone, he's talking to Cortana, he's using those type of services, and it's not really weird. Now, I'm with you. At my work, if I was talking to my computer, it would be extremely disturbing to everyone else because it's a relatively quiet environment. And if you're obviously talking pretty loud to your device or talking at all, it's going to be pretty noticeable. So I think it's definitely meant for the home right now, but I could see in the future this not being too far off from it being totally okay to talk to your device.
No, I don't see it being that far off. Especially if it's in the right environment. Like, environment is really going to play a big part in that. Right. But at the same time, I believe that I don't know. Like when it comes to a work environment, I feel like it's going to be different, especially because having a listening device constantly on is really going to turn a lot of people off.
Oh, it's very true, especially your old-fashioned, executives and stuff like that too.
I mean, to me, it's not even like in an old-fashioned, like whether they're older than say 50, whether 50 or 60. So for a lot of people who have kind of grown in the work environment for people who have grown in the work environment with this kind of growing with the technology as it grows and kind of seeing what it can do. But then there's just kind of like, I wouldn't want that constantly listening to me, especially if you're having certain conversations. You might not remember to turn it off, and you could be having a serious conversation on the phone and somehow that's picking it up.
Right.
I'm not saying someone is listening, but somewhere someone could find a way to listen.
Oh, it's going to be those privacy concerns. And I totally agree. And especially, being a little bit, in the legal realm and working as a law clerk in my work, I cannot imagine any of the managers that I work with being okay with any devices that are always listening because of the type of conversations we have. When you're talking about stuff, obviously you're saying things that are proprietary and stuff like that. And they would not be okay with that. Now, little do they know that most of their phones, they're all updated, actually run the newest phones, and Hey Siri is probably turned on, so it is always listening. Now, it's not always listening for certain stuff. No. It's not recording, but just that simple idea is interesting. So yeah, I'm kind of wonder where we're going to go with talking to devices. And when I started to think about, hey, do I actually want Siri on my desktop? I thought, okay, the times I actually use Siri are in the car when I can't use my hands, obviously when I'm trying to type or send a text and stuff like that. But beyond that, I don't find myself using Siri too much around the house or anytime that I can actually type. And I think the only reason I was really interested in Cortana was because it was a new operating system to me, and it was very helpful in finding things. But if I know my way around the operating system, Siri might not be that useful on the desktop. And I think that's why they haven't been in a rush to bring it. I think once they find a more advanced use for Siri, once there's better ways to use it on the desktop, I don't think they'll bring it. But nevertheless, I do really like Cortana on the Windows machines.
Yeah, I mean, we could really beat the dead horse here, and a lot of it for me just always comes back to, I understand like there really is no such thing as privacy really anymore,
right?
Especially for the idea of your phone constantly being on. Whenever someone's like, oh, I don't want such and such tracking me, it's like the moment you turned your phone on, you were tracked. Like, right. I'm sorry. I love when people are like, everyone's watching me. It's like, whose fault is that? You knowingly gave information in multiple places online, I'm sure.
That's the hard part for the everyday user who doesn't understand the settings and doesn't understand how to protect their privacy. Sadly, we are going now more and more towards the default user not knowing how much information they're giving out. So you're totally right. Yeah. And it's a conversation we could have on another show, because you could have a full show on this, on kind of helping people understand what type of information they're giving out. Art Jones had a good comment in the chat room. He says, sounds like it could be, it could find similar backlash that some Google Glass wearers experienced. And that's totally true. Google Glass, for people who don't know, was the glasses that you wear that had a camera and a heads-up display for the user. But the big part about it was that it had a microphone and a camera, and that the user could take photos. And this person was pretty much always walking around with a camera on their face. They could be recording you at any time, and you wouldn't have any knowledge of it. And it kind of caused a lot of turmoil and a lot of discussion on where these things are appropriate. Where can you wear them? How can you use them? And in a similar fashion, this was the first finals week that I've had. So I'm just finishing up law school finals. This is my first finals week where I've had a smartwatch, and I totally forgot I had it on. And it was 10 minutes in, and I kind of like self-freaked out. Like, if like this thing vibrates and if I ever got questioned. So 10 minutes into the test, I actually just took it off and went and put it in my backpack just to avoid someone questioning. Although, I'm not cheating with my smartwatch. It's not what I'm doing, but it's one of those things where people don't understand it yet, and it could be used for that. So it's just totally different. We're starting to have to consider so many different things now with wearable technology, with always listening devices. Now, I'm totally fine with always listening devices. I wire my home with them. I have Alexa, the Amazon Echo, who's always listening for me to talk. I have Siri turned on. The Hey Siri, when my phone's plugged into power, is listening. I'm totally fine with it. My Xbox has the Connect on it. And I'm probably someone who actually lives in a home that's more listening, quote unquote, than anyone else. But it's just something I think you have to understand how it works, what it's doing, and know how to protect your privacy with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as I'm responding to that last one that Peter Dennert had, where saying until the big ones catch up, in terms of being able to carry on conversation and track multiple topics at once, it's always going to come back to having to explain to the people who don't understand,
right?
Who don't get the fact that, no, right now things aren't being picked up. Like, you can speak around your phone without saying, "Hey Siri," and you'll be fine. But a lot of people don't get that. While there are a large, I wouldn't say a majority of people who do know that, I would feel like it's more in the minority, because the majority still believes they're being tracked at all times, and like the government's after them and Google wants all their info.
Right.
But it's just one of those things where having to explain constantly is really just going to slow. It's not going to slow development down, but I feel like it's going to keep a lot of those smaller companies that you listed before, which were Jibo and Cubic. It's going to keep those down because people aren't going to want that.
Right.
Which is unfortunate, because those are things where it's going into the next generation and being something that will be a good thing.
Oh, and those companies already are far and beyond,
Exactly.
Google and Apple in terms of voice recognition and things like that. So these small companies, it's kind of interesting how the small companies always are kind of leading the pack. They're coming out with these new things, but then the big companies have the bankroll to go in and buy them, and they don't have to develop the technology. They can just go buy up these small companies. That's a debate we can have another time. Man, you just get into so many topics about this, because it's not necessarily bad. The developer made an awesome thing. It's now being used, and they got a lot of money for it. And the big companies can focus their time on other things instead of developing these small tests. But there are downsides. I'm not saying there aren't, but there's definitely positives to it too.
Yeah. Quickly, I feel like we're both doing the same thing.
Yep,
but
go for it.
Quickly, I feel like before we move on to the next thing, which I feel like we should do after this question that Art just asked, what do you think of quantified self folks that are wiring themselves to be always on? For me personally, I don't really mind it. I kind of like how some people are very in tune with that and very willing to kind of do those things. I know someone who has their entire house wired with HomeKit and Wink. So he walks in to his house and says, "Hey Siri, do such and such a thing." And all of a sudden it happens. It's kind of like Mike with the Echo, where it turns lights on, turns lights off, just little things like that. I mean, it's really to each their own. Certain people really like that and like having the ability to like turn their shower on with the touch of a button from like downstairs.
Right.
For me, I don't really care for it. I don't need it. It's not that hard for me to turn a light on and off. So, I mean, it's really, again, a person-to-person thing, I think.
Well, and then on the quantified self part of that being, all these tracking devices that we use for fitness, for anything like that, for heart rate, for all of those, I think it's really cool. And I like how HealthKit, specifically from Apple, and I'm sure there's other companies out there doing it. I'm just an Apple fanboy, so we're talking about HealthKit. These things are starting to track yourselves. I mean, just without doing anything extra, by wearing maybe a band, by having your phone in your pocket, by doing certain things, we're able to have a whole nother level of data on ourselves, which can be extremely useful. I think in the most simple form, you can track your sleep, and you yourself can look at the graph and kind of learn some things from that. And on a more advanced level, you can gather data about your health that maybe a doctor would be able to look at and recognize anomalies or recognize things that could help you out in the future. And I just think that anything that betters ourselves, betters the understanding of ourselves, is a pretty cool thing. Now, obviously, this all comes back to how we feel about it and how we feel about privacy and how we feel about that data being stored somewhere that could be technically accessible. If you don't wire yourself up, only you can access your own stuff, right? Like, no one else can find out information about me and my health and what my heartbeat is right now, what my cholesterol might be. Once you wire yourself up, that data is out there. Now, not necessarily saying that it's out there for mischievous eyes, but it's definitely being stored somewhere. So I feel okay with it. But then again, I'm a very trusting person, and I feel like I go through the due diligence of checking the security settings and checking privacy settings, and only putting things out there that really, if someone did get a hold of them, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Yeah, it might be embarrassing. Yeah, it might be, my insurance company might raise my premiums, but beyond that, not too much.
Yes, and okay, so seeing what Art just said about whether it's of how it's people putting electronics under their skin, no, that's weird.
Oh,
Like,
I didn't. Oh, so he's going to take the extreme. He's not just talking about like wearable technology. All right.
no,
That's
just weird.
a little extreme. I'm not ready for that yet. I might be. Leo Laporte. Everyone knows Leo Laporte. If you're into podcasts, he's always been the one that says he will be the first person to have like something implanted in his brain or something like that, like a technology that'll plug into him. And I've always thought that's interesting because I wouldn't be. Number one, because I hate like anything medical. If I have to go to a hospital or doctor's office, I'm out. So first of all, I don't think I could do that from home. But secondly, I think right now there are things that can do some of that stuff just as well. And but it's cool though. I'm glad there are people out there that are willing to do that because we have seen that advances in technology are going to happen from people that are willing to do that. So if it becomes something that's a little less invasive than putting something under my skin, who knows?
Yeah. Okay. So we could keep going on this, and I feel like we could really get a lot further along, but
we'll bring it back. We'll bring it back to
I feel like
our Apple focused stuff, which is cool though. See, this is the part I love about Blab. And the reason I wanted to join Blab was because you get a lot of viewers who may not necessarily be followers of your show, and they get to hop in and they get to ask questions. That's super cool. By the way, I will throw this out there. If you do have an Apple related question, we will kind of tailor it to Apple related stuff about anything we talk about, or if you have a comment about anything we're talking about, you can request to join the open seat and we can add you into the show. The only thing we request is that you keep it family friendly. This is a family friendly show, so we like to keep it clean and fun and Apple focused. So, all right, well, let's move on. So in the past few weeks, there have been some updates to all of the Apple products, with the exception of the watch. I don't think there's been a watch update out. There might have been. I don't have one, so it's hard for me to keep up to date on those. But both El Capitan and iOS saw updates, and they weren't without problems, especially on the iOS side. So from El Capitan, we saw 10.11.2. Now, I always laugh when I see this in the description, improves Wi-Fi reliability and stability, because they've never been able to do that. I, for some reason, am one of those people that have always had Wi-Fi issues with my computer, and I know a lot of people do. It's kind of hit or miss. There's no rhyme or reason why you might have Wi-Fi issues, but in every single update, they tend to tell us that that is going to be fixed. And I haven't actually noticed any more or less problems. I think for mine, they've stayed about the same. So it's yet to be seen. But I actually haven't used my laptop too much on Wi-Fi. I hardwire my iMac in. So that's how I've eliminated that problem, is I usually hardwire as much as I can in. So improves Wi-Fi, also improves handoff and drop-off. And it fixes the Bluetooth disconnection issues that were happening. So people who are using certain Bluetooth devices and they were randomly disconnecting, they've tried to improve that. Other than that, not any problems with El Capitan. I would fully put my stamp of approval on updating and getting that updates. I usually always do suggest getting most updates from Apple right away, or at least within the first week, unless, usually you'll hear about the problems right away. But we can move on then to iOS 9.2. So iOS 9.2 came out, and there were actually a lot of really cool updates with iOS 9.2, one of which I don't use, but I might actually start using. Apple News got a new top stories section. Now, Apple News obviously being the Flipboard killer, or the attempted to be Flipboard killer. Colin, do you use Apple News at all?
Every now and then. It's kind of one of those things where, it's in my Apple
folder, Apple junk folder. Everyone has it. Yeah.
That's what mine is called. Definitely.
Yep.
It's just in that folder, and every now and then, like, I'll need to go into that folder for something, like whether it be music. Because, every now and people just don't put stuff on Spotify, which is really annoying.
Yeah.
So I download albums. And then, so when I'm in that folder, every now and then I'll be like, oh, what's on news? I saw that update. And I don't mind it. It's kind of nice. Like, to me, I kind of think of it not so much like Flipboard, but more like Mashable in a way.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably true. That's probably a better comparison than Flipboard.
Where it has that big story right at the top. And then just kind of stuff falling below it. So for me, I don't mind it. I don't really use the app that often, mainly because the first thing I do when I get into work is kind of go around on different news sites.
Right. Okay. So that's my question for you. So for me, I've kind of noticed this trend for me in the past when I get online to do anything, to go to news sources, to look at music, or to listen to music, to do anything like that. I have my standard sites I go to, and I read through them, but I've realized that I'm kind of limiting myself to just those sites. And I'm getting a very limited view on stories. So I've started using like the browse quote unquote features of a lot of things. So in Spotify, for example, I used to just have my music that I made a playlist of and I listened to that. And now I use the browse feature all the time to find like all this crazy new stuff. And for me, that's new. Now I know for you, that's probably nothing new, but for me, I've never used those, what do you call it? Aggregation.
Curated playlist.
Yeah, curated playlists or aggregated news sites or anything like that. I've never really used those because I used to think that I was better at that than an algorithm would be, or another person would be. And now I'm really starting to like those. So Apple News is kind of the same thing for me as Flipboard. I really started using Flipboard a lot because I'm like, hey, I can actually get a lot of sources in here. So I might give Apple News a try. But for you, do you have your sites you go to, or do you actually use these kind of aggregated sources where you can actually get a lot more information?
I mean, for the most part, I try to use an RSS feed. So, like when I come in the morning, I have like Gizmodo, IO9, Mac 9 to 5. Like I just have a bunch of different kind of tech sites kind of listed. It's the same thing on Apple News. Like those are the same sites that I clicked as like these are the ones I want to follow.
Right.
And so for me, I mean, it could easily be a handoff kind of thing where I could be looking at them on my computer, and then if I go out, I can look at them on my phone in the same aspect. But to me, it's really, I would rather look at it on a bigger screen. Like staring at a computer screen for 9 hours a day is already making my eyes go terrible. So why look at it on a smaller one? Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, I just have found them to be extremely useful. And that's true. I don't need any more time looking at my screens. Unlike you, I don't need that, but I've tended to like it. So they've got the top news story section. They've also added the mail drop feature into Mail, meaning that you can attach iCloud stuff very easily for huge files. So if you have a big file that you want to send an email to, super easy to drop that into an email, and the other person receives a link where they can download that. So sharing big files became a lot easier. They also came out with a new USB camera import dongle. So if you go out there to the Apple website, you can see it's $29. It's straight Lightning on one end and a USB female on the other. So you can plug in any sort of camera and directly download the cameras and videos, or cameras and videos. You can directly download the photos and videos from any camera, which is kind of cool and interesting. Something that they have been able to do in the past. I've done this in the past. They used to have a camera connection kit. So I'm not sure what the difference is now with this one. It is a lot slimmer and sleeker, which is kind of cool. But I'm guessing it adds support for more cameras than what they had in the past. But sadly, there have been a lot of issues with iOS 9, and they're still adding issues. And I have had some friends, actually, Paige, she asked a question on our Facebook group, or she did that or she messaged me, one of the two. But she asked, she was having trouble with FaceTime as soon as she updated. So her and her husband both could not make or receive any FaceTime calls. And I don't know if she ever resolved it because I started to look into it, and it happened right after this update occurred. Now, what I did find, though, was that there were carrier updates for almost all of the major carriers that came along with iOS 9.2. So if you go to Settings, General, and About, and you kind of wait there for a little bit, you may notice that a carrier update pops up and your carrier settings might need to be changed. And I think that fixed the issue for most people. It was especially iffy on Verizon. So if you were on Verizon, you updated to 9.2, but you didn't do your carrier settings, FaceTime was having trouble connecting. Not sure why, not sure what the deal was there. So make sure whenever you do an update, or even just in general, go into that General and About and just kind of wait there. It's kind of weird because there's no prompt and you can't prompt it. You just have to wait on that screen. And if there is an update, it'll pop up saying there are carrier updates. So that's just one thing to check. Colin, and you had another comment in this area.
I did.
Something about the iPad, low battery mode.
Oh, it's one thing. I was like, what are you talking about?
I didn't ask any questions.
Also, Art, we can come back to that. That might be a question for more conversation at some point when it comes to the best configuration for live streaming. I don't know. Mike might be the better outlet for that one. Yeah, so let's pop that in here real quick. Let's look at that. So using your iPad for live streaming. Now, I'm wondering if you're talking about live streaming yourself or you're going to watch live streams. I'm guessing you're talking about live streaming yourself. And I have tried that with the iPad. And honestly, with Blab, it's not too bad. The sound quality is pretty good. I would definitely suggest one of the newer model of iPads. You could go with the iPad Air, not the iPad Air 2. You could definitely go with the iPad Air, and I think you would be just fine. I have even done it from this ancient iPad 3,
and it's not too terrible. Now, this iPad 3 is getting extremely slow, so you have to put up with that. But I think the iPad Air might be a good solution for you. Obviously, if you're live streaming, you want a big screen, but I would more suggest, I have trouble suggesting this because I would more suggest a laptop at that point. When you're getting into live streaming, once you get into it, you're going to want a lot more options. Something simple might be good for you at first, but you're going to want some more options in the future, and the iPad kind of limits those. I've had trouble getting my ATR mic, so I use an ATR 2100, which is XLR and USB, so you can plug it in via USB. I've had trouble getting that to work with the iPad. You can do it via the camera connection kit with some apps, but some apps don't allow it. So finding a setup that works for you, there are a lot of rigs, if you look on Amazon, where it actually is a holder for the iPad and it has a plug-in into the microphone port, and then you can plug in like an XLR mic or anything like that. So there are some definite rigs that work. Live streaming is always tricky though. If you were just talking about recording a podcast on an iPad, that's a whole different scenario. I would suggest Boss Jock Studio and you'd be set. But live streaming gets a little bit tricky on the iPad. I don't do it because I find that the iPad can't keep up, and I like the higher quality video camera and I like the higher quality audio. So I think especially audio for a live stream is extremely important. And so I find that I can't really set all those with the iPad.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So, sorry. And then coming back to what we were about to say before answering the question, but thank you for the question, Art, is when it comes to low battery mode, it is a big thing that came out with iOS 9, where I believe, or iOS 9, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Where you could kind of turn your phone into low battery when it normally they prompt it when it gets to 20% so that it can kind of save some battery. You don't get as much background application running happening. So it saves a little bit more that way. But I actually turn mine on in the morning, first thing when I unplug my phone from the charger. It's just kind of one of those things. I don't know if it saves battery any more than having it just regular, but it's just one of those things that I like doing. But I noticed that it doesn't have it on the iPad. And I have an iPad, I believe it's an iPad 3 from 2013. Maybe it's a 4.
I think you have the 4 because you have the generation after mine. And because I have the 3. And no, it's not on mine either, which I kind of find interesting that they don't have that. Although most iPads don't usually, the big part about the power saver mode on the cell phone is that it limits. Well, yeah, and it limits the cellular radio. It limits the connection out to that data source all the time, which is the main cause of battery drainage. Is Facebook saying, "Hey, I've got a cellular connection. I might as well connect." And turning that power save mode off limits the amount of times it does that. With the iPads, some people have the cellular connection. I have the option to because I bought that model, but I don't use it. And so it's really not as big of a deal, but I still would like to see it in terms of if it's on Wi-Fi, I still don't want it pinging all those things all the time. If I really want to get as much power as I can out of the iPad, but you're totally right. The power save mode on the iPhone is a lifesaver. You and I used it that one time. We were both down at a Husker football game. And, especially when you're in stadiums, it uses a lot of battery because of the amount of choke on the network, and your phone really has to try hard to get a connection. And so we both turned on power save mode, and we both had above 90%, 6-7 hours later. It was pretty cool.
No,
I didn't. See, I was above 90. I didn't use any power, really.
Well, I was on my phone, so that
I didn't
help.
Right. I had Sprint, so I didn't have a connection, obviously, so I couldn't use it. So
which was funny. Having T-Mobile, I had like 4 bars. So I was able to use my phone, but it was just one of those things where it just helped. It made everything a little bit easier.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and of course, now that I looked for that setting, I went away from my show notes. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about real quick, and the reason I want to talk about it is because I know Colin and I will have differing views on this, is when is TouchID coming to the desktop machines for Apple? This was actually a question asked by Addie over on Home Gadget Geeks, and I thought it was a really cool question that she had asked. She had asked me on the show, and so I thought I'd bring it over here to Open Mic Night, being an Apple-focused show. And my answer to her was that I think TouchID is definitely coming to the desktop, and I think it's coming soon. But the reason I think we haven't seen it yet is because they've had big enough announcements, big enough improvements to their MacBooks and to their iMacs that they haven't needed that one really cool thing that makes people update. Obviously, the new MacBook has USB-C. It's very different and cool looking and slimmer and all this stuff. So they had a bunch of new updates to the MacBook. They didn't need to add TouchID in. Apple has been known to hold back those kind of key features to entice you to buy the next year's model. They do this all the time with all sorts of devices. But now that we have Touch ID in the iPad and the iPhone, and we've seen how well it works, my personal belief would be that I really want it in the computer, because now that I have it, now I have it on the 6. This is the first phone that I got that had it. I had a 5 before this, and this is the 6 Plus. I didn't have the 5S. Once you have it, it's just, I hate typing in passwords. I can use it for everything. You can almost all of my banking apps and credit card apps and all of those things use Touch ID. So even when I open up any sort of app, I can use it. So I've really gotten used to that. And when I come home, I would love to have that on the desktop. And I notice it when I go to my iPad. I have the older iPad without Touch ID, and I instinctively go to that home button and kind of just rest my finger on it, and it doesn't unlock. And it's just one more little annoyance to me. So I really want to see it. But Colin, I know you probably don't feel that way.
No, I don't. Like, I mean, yes, I'm sure if I had a different phone, I have an iPhone 5, so pre Touch ID.
Yeah.
I'm sure if I had a phone that had it, like, my answer might be a little bit different. But to me, it's just one of those things where, it's a gimmick. If it was on the Mac, to me, it's a gimmick.
See, I don't see it as a gimmick. I used to, but now I don't.
And the bad thing about it is you have to think about, where are they going to put it? Are they going to put it where the power button is? Is it going to rest under the power button? Like, are they going to have it sit where your palms are constantly sitting? Like,
yeah, that's true.
It's having a place for it that makes sense, where it's not constantly trying to pick something up. In my head, the power button would make the most sense.
That's
what
I
at
was
the same
thinking.
time, I don't think they would remove the power button just in the same way that they won't remove it on the phone. Like, the home button's not going to become a power button.
Yeah, it could be something like in that same position, but on the opposite side. And I think what they'll do is, I think then they'll end up coming out with a keyboard for the desktop iMacs that has it built into the keyboard. Now, I'm not sure how that would work, if it can transmit it over Bluetooth or not.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that would work or not, but it might, and it might work. And I don't know if it's secure enough, was my point there. But I guess my thing is, Touch ID is now so much more than just unlocking your device and getting into it. Now that apps can use it, now that other things can authenticate with it, and it's something I trust, it's something that's just made every single website a lot easier. Yes, I still have passwords, but I rarely use them on my phone because of Touch ID. And with the iTunes App Store and things like that, I just like it. I think that it's useful. And before, when it was just to get into your phone, I would agree with you. It's not useful at all.
Uh-huh.
But if we can secure those type of things on the computer, I just think it's one more added benefit. And Apple's known to add gimmicky things. They've done this in the past. You know, Touch ID on the phone at first was considered gimmicky, and to some it still is. And they still do it. So I think they will bring it to the Mac, even though some might not use it. But I just really like it, and I hope they do.
And Peter, for a second, I really liked what you were thinking right there with integrating it with the trackpad. But to me, it kind of comes back to if it were like out in the open, where your hand, for me, I'm always on the trackpad. I'm always moving around. If it's one of those things where they had it where it could turn off when the computer logged in, then yes, that would be the premier perfect place for having that Touch ID. But if it's one of those things where it's kind of like on the phone, where, well, I guess it doesn't really do anything once you're already in on the phone. But
well,
I think
and
my argument is slowly falling apart.
No, but I agree with that, because on the phone, the reason it has to be on the home button and somewhere where it's extremely accessible is because of how many times we unlock and lock our phones. You are constantly doing that. So it makes sense that it's in a place you touch all the time that you normally touch. On the Mac, on the desktop side, it doesn't need to be a place that you touch all the time, because how many times you're going to use it. Once you log into your computer, usually it stays awake for 20 minutes, even if you're not actively using it. And then every time you want to enter a password, you can. So on the Mac, it wouldn't need to be in a place that is easily accessible. The power button, like you mentioned, or that area, that general area on the laptop side would be perfect. And I don't know, on the desktop side, that's where it gets a little funky, because it would need to be on the keyboard. First of all, with my setup, it would be a really long reach. It would be inconvenient for me to have to reach up and touch my computer. And they don't really want you to do that anyway. Apple doesn't like you touching their devices. They want on the desktop, they want that to sit there and look pretty. Yeah. So, yeah, just an interesting question of where they would do it if they end up doing it. But I do think it will be there. I'm going to make my prediction that it's going to be here next year. So next year at this time, we will have Macs with it. But that's obviously just me guessing. That's based on no facts, no stories, no nothing. So don't take my word on it. The Mac Observer puts out an interesting article. If you guys haven't noticed, on my Twitter, I tweet out almost every single article that Mac Observer writes, because they are all so extremely useful that I find myself, for me, it's actually really cool because I can just go in and look at my Twitter stream for really cool stuff that they've tweeted out. So some of it is funny, some of it is lighthearted, some of it is really cool tips and tricks for your Mac. They wrote a funny one about that time that you take your phone out of your pocket at night and you go to plug it in and it doesn't charge, and it's because there is pocket lint built up in the lightning port. This has happened to me. Colin, has it happened to you at all?
Yes.
Okay, so it's actually a real problem. Good. I didn't know if you were like
gross.
smiling because you thought it was like funny and stupid, or if you thought, okay, no, this is actually something that happens.
No, it was one of those things where it wasn't charging at work, and I was like, "What is going on?"
Right.
And, I don't remember where I found it. This was maybe like 6 months ago, maybe even closer to a year ago, and it said something like, "You should take something and kind of run it through the lightning port and see what you pull out." And the amount of lint that came out, I was like,
it's grosser than a belly button.
I was like, how in the hell did a lightning connector even fit in here?
Right. Yeah. Well, and my brother-in-law, actually, the reason I thought this was funny because he came to me the other day and he's like, dude, I fixed my own problem, but my phone wouldn't charge, and I looked in there and it was like almost completely full. So, it's a funny article, but it's true. It does happen. If your phone isn't charging, check the power port and see if it's actually not being connected all the way because you have lint in there. Obviously, an air can, one of the cleaning air cans would be the best way probably to get it out, but that might not work. So any sort of small thing, just make sure to not scrape too hard on those connectors. Just kind of go in there with something.
I have heard that if you take a little bit of duct tape, take a little thing and kind of like wrap it around like a paper clip and just kind of like,
oh, there you go.
And then you just pull it back out. That's what I did. It worked. I mean, it kind of pulled everything out. I put it in one more time just to make sure that there wasn't any extra. But right after I did it the first time, I plugged it in and it was fine. So
yeah, as long as the residue doesn't stay around there too long, I think that would work perfectly.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, that was just kind of a fun article I wanted to talk about. The next one is about Twitter clients. And this is mainly my question for Colin, because Colin, for me, is always he's always been kind of my Twitter guy. He always knows stuff about Twitter before I do. He knows all the cool apps you can use. So my question to him is, are there any third-party apps that we need to be aware of right now? And are third-party apps nowadays, in the current state and time, I know back in the day they were really popular because they had a lot more features, but now are third-party apps any better or worse than the native Twitter client?
For me, I mean, I use Tweetbot.
Okay.
But Tweetbot has actually gotten me to use Twitter less.
Really?
I mean, it loads just fine, but unlike on like the regular Twitter client that you would have for your phone,
right?
I guess just the regular Twitter client, Twitter itself. I mean, it's just a lot more difficult to get to like a conversation stream. I feel like I spend more time trying to find the beginning of a conversation or looking at someone's reply, just looking at any reply anywhere, not to me personally, but just anywhere. And it just feels like it's clunky. Like, I just feel like I can't get to where I want to go.
Okay, that's exactly why I left. I used to use Tweetbot. I used to use Twitterific and some of those. And back then, tracking a conversation, tracking things like that was a lot easier on those apps than they were on the native Twitter client. The native Twitter client has come a long way and gotten a lot better. And so I guess that was kind of my point was, so for me, I'm the same way. Well, I guess I'm not. On iOS, I switched. Now I use the native Twitter client. And that's also
very
because
close to going back.
It's not terrible. Now, I will admit that I don't need moments. They can take that out. I wish I could make my buttons on the bottom smaller or bigger and eliminate one of those columns for moments. I don't use them at all. But for me, I switched back to native client, and especially because also I use some of the built-in features of iOS, the built-in tweet features that pop up and stuff like that. And it just seems to work a little bit better with the native client. But on the desktop side, I find myself still using TweetDeck. Now, that is an app that most people probably knew a lot about back in the day, but maybe some of them kind of fallen off. But the reason I use TweetDeck is because it's perfect for what I need. I have 3 Twitter accounts. I have my personal one. I have the network Twitter account, 2980 Network. And then I have our Suit and Scrubs podcast account. And being able to use all 3 of those accounts with extreme ease and track all the notifications to those, TweetDeck is, I think, still the best client on the Mac.
Yeah.
But do you use the web browser or do you use a client?
At work on the Windows machine, I use the web browser for TweetDeck, which is perfect. I love it because it works.
I didn't even know that. There's a web version of TweetDeck?
Yeah. It's the exact same thing that you'll get on the desktop version.
That is amazing. I did not know that. So at work, I could get that without downloading the app.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
To me, I think the web app actually, it works a lot quicker and a little bit more seamlessly, I feel like.
Okay.
Than what I have on my desktop, especially for Mac. I feel like it just slows my computer down. And I was trying to use it last night with the debate going on, and it just kind of like one tweet would pop up at the top and then like 3 more would pop below it, like they had come in before but hadn't shown up yet. So it just felt clunky.
Right.
But
and that's kind of TweetDeck does get a little bit. Are you talking about TweetDeck feeling clunky, or just the web version, like the way it ran was a little bit clunky?
No, the web version was like seamless. Nothing really slows down.
Gotcha. Okay, I was confused.
If there's an influx, it'll just fly. But for some reason, like on my on my laptop, my Mac, everything just felt really slow. Like it just seemed very difficult to get the next information. And
I don't know if that's a trend or not. I always used to really like getting the app version of anything, especially on a Mac, getting like, if they have an app, I'm going to get that. Whereas now, with how far the web has come and how far browsers has come, if you can do everything in the browser, it makes the Chromebook seem amazing and like a great idea, because everything in the browser seems to run a lot better for me. And especially if you're on a older computer, maybe that doesn't have the RAM or the processor speed that it needs, running it in a browser can actually help a lot. So I don't know if that's a trend or not, but I totally agree with you. I would be the exact same way. Now that I know that, I'm probably going to use the web version of TweetDeck.
And the nice thing with that version of TweetDeck, especially when you're using through Chrome. So sorry, Peter was saying that the Chrome OS is terrible. I'll agree with that.
Okay, I haven't used it, so that makes sense.
I've used a Chromebook. It's awful. Sometimes it works, other times you're just like, please work. Like,
just give me a normal operating system.
But with the web app, especially with Windows, Chrome usually like automatically or will ask you if you want to download like Chrome apps, which are basically the Chrome set of apps or the Google apps into this little desktop client. And so it'll pop them up, but when you click them, it opens it in Chrome. And
that's nice. Okay, so it gives you a desktop accessible version or desktop accessible link to the web version. Yeah,
and since I use Chrome exclusively at work, the first thing I do is like, instead of even hitting Chrome, which sits right next to this little drop down or little like pocket, I'll click that and open TweetDeck first.
Right.
So it just takes me right to that page. It's perfect.
I like that. So on the Mac, then you are using that. That's what you choose to do for Twitter, or do you go to the regular website?
At work, I use TweetDeck on the web browser.
Right.
Home, I use TweetDeck, or every now and then I'll use TweetDeck on the OS. But most of the time, I just go to twitter.com.
Okay. Great. Yeah. And it depends on what I'm needing to do. No, I was just trying to make sure I had the whole circle there correct, because I'm the exact same way. The way I use certain apps is way different, whether I'm at work, home, or school, mainly because the hardware I'm using differs, and at work I'm really locked down. So I have to find creative ways to do things at work on the hardware I have. So Travis said in the comments, he said he would consider the Twitter app over Tweetbot if it had a dark mode. And I kind of agree. They do need some different view options on there. I did like the dark mode, and that's one reason I like TweetDeck, is because I like the dark mode on TweetDeck on my Mac because of the dark mode. But I don't know if that's something they'll add or not, but I agree. The white can be a little bit intrusive, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that and kind of thought to myself, again, I love the word gimmicky, but the dark mode, I mean, it just feels natural on TweetDeck almost.
Right.
Where I feel like TweetDeck is supposed to be seen in that like dark mode. But to me on the phone, I mean, it's going to be bright. I tried with the dark mode on Tweetbot for a little bit, and I was like, I don't like this. Yeah. I don't know why. It was weird.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I don't know. I like it in certain applications, and I don't in others. And I think the view options, they could throw in that option there just to make it a little more useful. But overall, just what I was going to say is my experience with the Twitter native app has gotten a lot better. And even on the web with the native Twitter web, just going to the web and going to twitter.com has gotten a lot better as well, which is kind of surprising because some of their other changes I'm not fond of. But as far as usability of the app goes, it's gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
All right, so tips of the week. I have a tip of the week for you guys, and it relates back to the beginning of the show when I admitted, sadly, that I have now started to use Windows machines, and I have a Windows machine now. And but this tip came from the fact that, okay, so I run a 3-monitor setup here. I have my iMac, and I have 2 monitors on each side. The monitor on the right is wired to the iMac, but I can also switch the input over to this new Windows machine I have. Switching back and forth was getting a little bit clunky. So obviously, as an ATech person would do, I was like, okay, I want to remote into this computer. I just want to open up a window on my Mac and see what's going on the Windows machine. Now, there are some very obvious solutions to this. TeamViewer is a free solution that's really good, especially with version 11. It got a lot less clunky and a lot slimmer is the way I would call it, and a lot speedier with those connections. But for me, I like having that local connection. I've always used VNC to connect to any other desktop or RDP. So I use RDP, the remote desktop protocol on Windows, and I use it from my Mac using the Microsoft remote desktop app to remote to my work computer. And that was fine and great. And I thought, okay, great. I have a Windows machine at home now. I'll just open up the Microsoft remote desktop app and we'll be good to go. Little did I know that Windows Home version does not include RDP. So you cannot RDP to a Windows machine using Windows Home. So I had to find another solution. I installed TeamViewer, but like I said, TeamViewer was just a little too laggy for me. I'm hardwired in. Both machines are, so I should get a very fast connection. It shouldn't be laggy. So what I did was I installed TightVNC. So if you just give it a Google, TightVNC, or I'll put the link in the show notes. If you guys are subscribed to the RSS feed of this show or in iTunes or anything like that, I'll put the link down there. But TightVNC is a really slim client you just throw on your Windows machine, and then you can VNC to it from any Mac or any other machine you want. So I can use my normal VNC software and get in there, and now it's perfect. Now on this right screen, I can just, with my Mac, switch back and forth between my Windows machine and my Mac, which is pretty cool. So that was just my tip, TightVNC or TeamViewer, but TightVNC is a really good solution to remote desktop to a different machine, and especially for Windows Home, because I was wondering if it was worth it to upgrade to the Windows 10 Professional, and I was like, not just for RDP. It doesn't make any sense. I can get this for free, and I did, which was kind of cool. Okay, so that was my tip of the week. And now, Colin, did you have a tip or pick that you wanted to cover, or you're gonna let me take these? No, you'll let me go on this one? Okay, fine. Then I'll continue on to my pick of the week. My pick of the week is a fun game. Be ready to spend $3 if you want, because this game is called Touchstone, and I really like it. First of all, because I like puzzles, and I like puzzle games that build, and I like simple, clean puzzle games, and this is kind of one of them. Touchstone is kind of the premises that you are a kind of a secret agent trying to stop terrorism in the United States. Now, full disclosure, in this game, there are a lot of idealistic things. There may be some topics you might not agree with on tapping into people's phones and stuff like that, and racially profiling people. There are some issues like that, but it makes for a really cool storyline in the game, and it makes for something that makes you think while you're doing puzzles. It's just kind of puzzles plus a storyline, which is something I really like. And so the puzzles are a very simple, you're trying to connect lines across the screen. So one line starts over here and it needs to end here, and you need to rearrange the screen so that the lines connect. It's a very simple idea that can get very complex. So Touchstone, I'll put a link to it in the show notes. It's $2.99 in the App Store. I don't know if it's on Android, but it is for sure on iOS. It's just pretty fun. Might want to give it a shot. I don't know if there's a preview for it. I've really liked seeing those little preview videos of apps now. I'm not sure if there's one for this one, but it's pretty cool. If you Google it and YouTube it, you can actually see some gameplay of it, which is kind of fun. That's how I found it, actually. All right. And another thing I want to let you guys know is if you are a listener to the show, and if you want, there is now 2980 network gear / swag available for you guys to buy, whatever you guys want to call it. Coffee mugs, shirts, anything like that. If you just head over to 2980network.com/store, you guys can have there. I put that out there simply because we don't make any money off it. It's just for fun. It's just if you guys want it, a mug with our logo on it. There's a 2980 version. There is an open mic night version, and there's a suit and scrubs version of all of the stuff. I got this because I didn't realize how fun it was to collect podcasters' coffee mugs. I love coffee mugs. I use them every day. So I started buying the podcasts I listen to. I would buy their mug, and I thought, hey, someone might want to do that with our stuff too. So 2980network.com/store will redirect you to Redbubble, which is who we use. Kind of fun. Colin, I'll get you one. Don't worry. You don't even need to buy one of our mugs. You'll have a fancy new open mic night mug sitting on your desk at work soon.
The only thing I'm laughing about is I'm thinking to myself how different you and I really are.
Really? Yeah. Yeah. We are quite different. See, but that's what makes perfect co-hosts on the show is having two people that are just completely different on almost all aspects of life. Really, I mean,
yeah, really. For as long as we lived together, it's just one of those things. I'm like, man, we both do very different things.
Right. We like technology is a common thing, and we like to talk to each other. We both like to talk, so both benefits there.
Yeah.
All right, so that's my pick of the week. Now, the fun part of the show, the last segment that we'll go into is our beer picks or drink picks of the week. And so this is kind of just a fun part that Colin and I really enjoy finding kind of cool beers, or Colin enjoys finding really cool like whiskeys and scotches and stuff like that. I'm more into the beer side. He's more into that. So I thought I would throw out my beer. And if Colin wants to throw it in, he can, but I'm surprising him with this. My pick of the week is the Leinenkugel's Vanilla Porter. Now, a lot of you might have tried a vanilla bean porter, which is what I've had in the past. And I'm not a huge fan of that. I like it. But it's not one of my favorites. I don't like really the coffee taste in my beer as much. So this is just the vanilla porter part. It doesn't have the beans. So there's no really coffee-ish taste. So the Leinenkugel's Vanilla Porter is out there. You can get it in a 6-pack. That's what we grabbed and tried it, and it was pretty good.
You know, vanilla bean is like a legitimate thing. It's not a coffee thing.
But it tastes like, it has like a coffee taste to it.
Have you ever had vanilla bean ice cream?
No.
Vanilla bean is just like the full bean. Vanilla is mostly like the extra.
But I thought it kind of had that coffee taste. Is that not true?
No, like that beer that I had a few weeks ago was a coffee vanilla stout.
I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about a different one that we had down at one of the bars downtown. I thought it was a vanilla bean porter, and I thought, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, I like it. This is my pick. But are you sure? Now I'm gonna have to Google it. You're right. You're definitely right. Yeah, vanilla bean, it might not have coffee taste to it, but maybe this one did that I had. So either way, a Leinenkugel's Vanilla Porter is a great beer that you guys should try.
My beer was one I actually had this week, and I just had one of them. It's called Pseudo Sue. It's out of Iowa.
Never heard of it.
It's apparently it's really hard to find, but it was at a bar I really like going to. Like, even one of the owners was like, I don't know how we have this.
Really? So that hard to get. See, and that's the hard part about recommending beers is a lot of time they're so local that it's really hard to get them. Like when you go to Chicago, you get way better beers than we do here. You know, you get all the really cool ones when you go home.
Well, the thing is, I mean, a lot of it has to do with laws, like just kind of like, what is it? Export laws or something like that?
Interstate commerce laws?
Yeah, interstate whatever. Sure. So when it comes to that, Chicago just has a lot of open ability when it comes to what booze kind of comes through there.
Right.
Nebraska is not nice when it comes to a lot of stuff. I think a lot of it has to do with like the tax on it. I don't know
what it is, but it's just weird how it's so different no matter where you go, the selection that you can get. But it makes it kind of fun because when you travel somewhere new, you can always try a new beer or a drink, which is kind of cool. So.
But yeah, if you're ever going through Iowa, or maybe you're close to, I think that someone told me that you can get it in like South Sioux or Sioux City or something like that. If you're close to either of those areas, apparently, I mean, I would recommend trying it. It's an IPA, which I know right now when it comes to craft beer, everyone's like, I had an IPA. But this one, I mean, it was good. It was really good.
It was good. Just give it a try. That's what we're saying.
That's me.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much to everyone who joined us live on Blab. It was awesome having all you guys over in the chat. I know some of you are listeners. I know PTD, Peter out there. Thank you so much for coming back and joining us this week. I know we just kind of surprised everyone. We said, hey, we're coming back. We're live. Sad part about how this whole schedule thing works out is the next 2 weeks are Christmas and New Year's, both of which I'm out of town for. So no show the next 2 weeks. So we're going back on a little mini break, but I think everyone takes a break during those times, so I don't feel bad. But we are going to be back now. And this is, I think, I'll talk about it with Colin later, but I really like Blab. I thought it was kind of fun. Yeah. And I like how the chat room is integrated. It's super easy to work with. So I think we're going to stick with this. We're back with live video. Him and I just need to talk. Next semester starts for me, and I have a whole different class schedule, and I'm sure he has a different schedule with his nighttime stuff too. Your volleyball league that you were in and stuff like that. So, so we'll talk about a date. Yeah, so we'll find a day that works and a time that works. But I think Wednesdays tends to work pretty well for both of us. So again, thank you guys for listening. I love it that you guys are interacting with the show. And if you want to send in email comments, Mike@2980network.com is the email address you can send stuff into. Comments, questions, anything you want to say about the show, send me an email, or better yet, tweet me. I really have been into Twitter lately. I'm kind of stepping up my Twitter game. That's at WiegerTech, which I know is difficult. WIEGER Tech is where I am at. Colin is at Colin with 1L _ ball13, right?
Yep.
Oh, I nailed it. First time I've gotten that right. I always say the wrong one. So Colin _ ball13 with 1L in Colin. And that's where you can find him. So tweet us both about anything you find in the show. But also, if you guys haven't noticed, and I want to just say this at the end, I've kind of rearranged all of our social media. So if you notice, I've created a network page on Facebook. There's no longer an open mic night page. It is just 2980 Network is the page on Facebook. Very easy. If you liked open mic night, you automatically got transferred over to the new one. That's the way the transfer process worked, which was pretty cool. So if you didn't notice that now you like the random 2980 Network page, it's because it was transferred over, and you guys can just see all the posts from Suit and Scrubs and open mic night. It makes them much easier on me. And same thing with Twitter. If you just want updates on shows and you don't want to follow all my random mumbo jumbo, you can just go follow at 2980 Network, and you can just get updates on the shows, which is kind of cool. I'm glad we did that. It makes it a lot easier for people. I did get some comments from people that said it's hard for me to find open mic night tweets in all your normal tweets. And so I said, okay, that's a valid point. Let me create a network Twitter, and so that we can just have all the information there. But Colin, thanks for joining, man. It was fun. I'm glad we did it.
Yeah. It was a good time.
Time flew.
It did. All of a sudden, it's 8:00.
Yeah, it went for a full hour, which is a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun stuff to talk about. So that's what I like, though. That's what the kind of podcast that I enjoy. So we will see you guys next week. But until then, tech on.